today's Ingram rep picks, we have Andrea Tetrick, Ty Wilson, and Rob Pine. So I'm going to hand it off to AT and pull up her Edelweiss link.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor and privilege to be here with our esteemed CALIBA booksellers, as well as my trusted colleagues, Rob and Ty. The first book I want to talk about today is All God's Children. This is a Europa title by Erin Gwynn. You know those times when you pick up a novel and you know within the first few pages that you're in the hands of a master and you're in for a ride? Well, that's exactly how this has played out. And it's just kind of unbelievable how well this book is laid out. It's beautifully written. And it's an historical novel with issues that echo the concerns of contemporary America, involving slavery, gay rights, gun violence, and it focuses on typically marginalized characters in a genre that too often underestimates their impact on American history. And I just, it's just something that I hope that everybody has a chance to pick up. We have galleys available. It publishes October 6th. I would say in comparisons, it's Cormac McCarthy meets Tim O'Brien. So let's move on to number 2, and that would be Andrea Dworkin, The Feminist as Revolutionary. This is by Martin Duberman, just published earlier this month on the 8th. It's a hardcover at $29.99, and this is from our dedicated friends at the New Press. This is the definitive biography of the radical feminists from one of America's leading biographers, Duberman. And it's definitely essential reading for our Me Too era, and a corrective that will restore the magisterial thinker, really. And I think will position her as in her rightful place as one of the great thinkers of the 20th century. Now, this is going to be a controversial read as well, but I think that journalist Rebecca Tracer says it best when she said, "You may think you know Dworkin, and there may indeed be things that you can't stand about Dworkin, but there is so much about her work that is prescient, terrifying in its acuity, raucous and daring, and very much of this moment." I can't agree more. I think that there's definitely renewed interest in her work. She's had in the past year or so, she's had major retrospectives and features on her work and thinking in the New York Times, the New Yorker, LA Review of Books, Book Forum, New York Book Review, or New York Review of Books. So definitely of some interest here, and should be in every decent biography section for sure. Moving on to something completely different is The Banks. This is a box set of 6 separate, if you can see that, 6 separate comic books. And this is from Roxane Gay. She wrote this, and it's illustrated by Ming Doyle. This is from a very new publisher for PGW that hasn't had much trade penetration at all. So we're treating these as new titles. This did publish December 1st, 2019, but because there really was no representation in the trade, no one's seen this. And besides, we have, the connection of Roxane Gay, who's selling well across the board for our indies. So I think this is just something I wanted to point out as these folks came aboard in between seasons, and considering the kind of atmosphere we're in right now, it's easy to miss things, as we know. And is there anything else on this? Yeah, we just learned that this, the Banks is now being developed as a feature film, and Gay is going to adapt the story for the screen and executive produce. So it will definitely have the Roxanne Gay treatment all the way through. The storyline is 3 generations of female master thieves in Chicago have to get beyond their differences and family squabbles for one last heist to avenge the loss of one of their family members. It's great. Just wanted to touch upon a highlight coming up in our winter, for our winter list. This is publishing March 2nd. This is The Committed by Viet Thanh Nguyen. Of course, he won the 2016 Pulitzer Prize in Fiction for The Sympathizer. This is a sequel to The Sympathizer. And let me just tell you, there is no freshman, or there's no sophomore slump here. This is a winner. As you can tell, the cover treatment sort of echoes The Sympathizer nicely. The setting here is a man of 2 minds as he comes to France as a refugee and turns his hand to capitalism and dealing drugs in 1980s Paris, not a friendly city of lights time in that city's history, who must come to grips with his past that follows him there. This is a novel of ideas as well as a literary thriller. It's firing on all pistons, and I just can't see how this novel won't do well all across the board, but definitely will position Nguyen as one of the great contemporary men of letters in America. I want to talk to you about The Edge of the Continent, the Desert. This is from Jacqueline Susskind. It's a book of poetry. It follows up on Edge of the Continent, The City. This one obviously is about the desert, specifically Joshua Tree. And Susskind, this is part of a larger series that takes a look at different aspects of California geology. These poems are intimate and compelling, and I can't recommend them highly enough. It's in a beautiful hardcover, paper over board format, and this comes from one of our small SoCal, small but mighty SoCal publishers, Rare Bird, and this published the 15th, so it's out. Thanks a lot for giving this pride of place.
All right, and we're going to wrap that one up and hand it off to Rob. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming in to see us. I've got a few titles. I mostly kind of tried to focus on things I thought would work as holiday gifts, but a couple other things thrown in there. So without any ado, I'm going to jump right in. The first book I wanted to mention is from Gestalten, Surf Shacks Volume 2. This is a follow-up to a book they did, I think, 3 years ago. It's going to be in the CALIBA holiday catalog. I think, like a lot of Gestalten books, it's a great sort of coffee table book for people who want to show they embrace the surfing lifestyle. It's a collection of spaces from surfers all over the world, although a good portion of this is based in California, but you also see people from Indonesia, Europe, all over the place. So a great gift for that surfer in your life. This maybe not so much as a gift book, but it was my favorite fiction read on this list, Animal Wife from Red Hen Press. It's short stories by Laura Ehrlich. To be honest, one of the reasons I read this was I love this cover. I just think it's one of the best covers of the season. It's all of the short stories are either inspired by, based on a classic fairy tale, or have some element that reference you back to one of the classic fairy tales, but they all feature women or young girls who the stories aren't illustrating the lessons from those classic fairy tales. They're much more contemporary and just a really, really kind of fun read. The next one, and I go quickly, just so feel free to ask questions, send me an email, is a follow-up by Paul Madonna, who I think is best known in the Bay Area. But this book, this is a follow-up book that he did, I think from 2017, called Close to the Angels. It's an illustrated novel, so they're mostly text, but then he also has these great pen and ink illustrations throughout it. A lot of it takes place in Asia, but also in the Bay Area. It's a kind of a mystery, philosophical. This is actually going to be 2 volumes in a slipcase, and it answers questions that were sort of left open in the first book, and there's also a bit of a murder mystery that he's trying to prevent, maybe. Interesting read, great gift, especially for completists. Anyone who had the first one is going to want these. The next book, a little inspirational book that I think will be great on holiday tables. It's The Stillness of Winter by Barbara Mahaney. It's from Abingdon Press. So definitely has Christian overtones, but it's not super heavy in its Christianity. It's just a peaceful, quiet little book to help people get through the winter and embrace what being in the winter means. And again, I just love this cover. I think it'll stand out amongst some of the more Christmassy kind of titles, and should work even into January, February. The next one, I don't have anything to show, but a YA book, The Future of Science is Female. The reason I wanted to mention this book is I think this is an easy one to skip over because it looks like the many kind of collections of female scientists that have come out. This is not quite that. What this is instead a collection of current contemporary scientific problems and contemporary female scientists who are working on those problems. So it's not just another, short biography of Marie Curie. It's actually women working today. And I think it's a really different approach. And the reading level is a little bit more advanced too, which I don't know how much has been done for the YA market. And the author lives outside San Francisco. The next book is from Grupo, which is, we just picked them up maybe 18 months ago. They are translating and importing books from Spain. Up to this point, they've almost all been business books or sort of like self-help books that is already kind of crowded market just from native English speakers, I think. This is the first book that we've gotten from them that I'm really kind of excited about. The Best of Berasategui, who is Martin Berasategui, who is a Basque chef. He's got 7 restaurants in Spain and Latin America with 12 Michelin stars between them. I think for real foodies, they're gonna know who this guy is. This is the first cookbook of his that's been translated into English. And it's not full of gourmet recipes, it's sort of his home cooking. So for anyone who likes Spanish or Basque cooking, I think this would be a great gift and could easily kind of get lost on shelf. Because I don't know what kind of publicity, there probably will be no publicity. But if somebody's looking for that great book for a foodie, this is a good one to steer them to. The next one I wanted to mention, I didn't order a copy of this, it is out in time, but it's the new Aperture journal, which I know a lot of stores, this ends up in the periodical section. because of quarterly. This is one, though, I would urge people to consider perhaps putting in the Native American section and treating more as a book. So this is a collection of essays, mostly by Indigenous writers and photographers. And it's not just about photography, it's about how Natives have been portrayed through visual medium, but also what contemporary artists are doing. I think it's just a super different book for that Native American section, and extremely cool. A kid's book, one of my favorite kids' books, Space Maps from What on Earth Publishing. Great oversized for that kid who's just at that perfect age. It's got every possible thing about space. So it does talk about the solar system, but also space exploration. And it's, again, just a big laptop book. Next one, Aperture, Eyes Open. This is actually a read. Now is the time for this book. It came out originally 5 years ago. This is a collection of essays and exercises for kids to do to learn about visual art, somewhat photography. What I think makes this so appropriate now is almost every kid has a camera that is better than the camera that professionals were using 10 years ago. And it's, you know, perfect for kids stuck at home, great exercises they can do. Again, I think just a great gift book. And then finally, The Wizard of the Pigeons. This is just Mark. I'm holding up if anyone wants to give it a read. This is the 35th anniversary edition of this book. It's by Megan Lindholm, which is Robin Hobb's actual name. Robin Hobb is a pseudonym. Relatively, I think, unknown book. It's been out of print since the early 90s. It's one of the earlier examples of urban fantasy. The main character, whose name is just Wizard, is a homeless vet who possesses kind of an odd sort of magic. But I think Grim Oak produces these collector editions that are just gorgeous books. And for fans of Robin Hobb, number one, I think a lot of them may have heard about this book but never had a chance to buy it. Number two, will maybe not heard of it and be pleased to see it, and it'll just make a great gift. And it's a fun urban fantasy that, even though it was written 35 years ago, the themes of homelessness and veterans resonate still today. And I think could be a great gift for the right person. And that is what I had.
Thank you, Rob. We're gonna hand it off to Ty now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ty Wilson, the Northern California rep for PGW and Two Rivers. AT didn't have a chance to talk about Forests of California from Heyday. And I just want to mention that, especially now, poignantly, O.B. Kaufman has sent this out into the world. This is another 650-page behemoth like California Field Atlas, filled with his trail paintings and maps, all hand-painted and hand-drawn. And it could be something in short supply in December, but something to keep an eye on. This is the first of a massive trilogy that's going to include deserts and coasts as well. Vesper Flights by Helen McDonald. Helen, of course, is a known quantity. And it's easy to underestimate a book of essays, but each of these is sort of a door that you open that keeps opening. It's a cabinet of wonders, truly. She, in the title essay, begins one paragraph by saying, "Swifts are magical in the manner of all things that exist just a little beyond understanding." And she explores that range of understanding, that magical range, really well. It's scientific yet poetic and accessible. And for anyone who hasn't read her, didn't get into H is for Hawk, this is a great intro. It's also, of course, just for anybody interested in good literature, a terrific gift idea. Shuggy Bane. This is coming out in paperback this week. The hardcover dropped into the COVID. Essentially, it was a February release in hard, and everything kind of shut down. It really didn't have much of a sales life, but it's now shortlisted, of course, for the Booker, and it's longlisted now for the National Book Award. It is a debut novel that is as accomplished as I've ever read. It's the story, it's a portrait set in the 1980s in lower working class Glasgow of a boy as he grows up in the shadow of his deeply alcoholic, amazingly glamorous mother. And it's that complicated relationship that Stewart explores. The first printing of the paperback has already been allocated, but there will be 2 reprints, one coming mid-month and then one right around the Booker presentation at the end of the month in October. Next is Braiding Sweetgrass, the deluxe edition. This is, we can't even keep the paperback in right now. This is kind of the little book that could. It's sold over 400,000 copies and is in its 4th year finally hit the New York Times list. And now this deluxe edition, which has a stamped linen jacket, ribbon marker, deckled edge. There are 5 beautiful new illustrations in it. It's shipping this week. It's landing in all the West Coast stores this week. And it's one to watch. There's only going to be about 8,000 left after initials have landed. And there's talk of a reprint, but nothing solid yet. So Braiding Sweetgrass is one to watch. Another debut novel from Europa called The River Within by Karen Powell. This is a novel set in 1955 in rural England. It begins with the body of a young man washing up on a riverbank near a small town that's part of a large estate that surrounds it. And then over the course of several weeks, the village secrets start to emerge lyrically in these short chapters that sometimes go back several decades to fill in the backstory and then right up to the present. It's a really tight, interesting structure that kept me going. And anyway, it's occurring right as England's aristocracy is losing power and privilege. So there's some resonance with issues going on now, but essentially it involves themes that you find in Victorian lit. This is for the reader of, George Eliot and Thomas Hardy. You'll find issues of class and nature, that dark consuming nature here brought up. It's a terrific start for an English author, Karen Powell's River Within. The next is an especially small book. It's a midlist title from Europa called Peace Talks. And it was supposed to be out this week. It's been delayed just a week or so. But it's by Tim Finch. It involves a lonely Norwegian diplomat who's holed up in an Austrian hotel. And what he's doing is leading negotiations between 2 Middle Eastern factions. And he's going through the minutiae of these negotiations, telling the reader, narrating the negotiations, until you realize that he's not talking to you. He's talking to his recently deceased wife. And he's mediating his own grief through her. And you have these parallel talks going on, the peace talks that he's having with himself and the peace talks he's having with these 2 factions. And it's a quiet, deeply sympathetic character that you live with, and one I wanted to get back to when I wasn't reading the book. Peace Talks. Wild Minds is a rollicking history of the first 50 years of animation. And this starts off in 1911. It's essentially a startup culture. Artists were growing the art as the technology was developing. They were taking months to just put together a couple of minutes of animation. It starts with Winsor McCay, who's the most popular syndicated comic artist at the time, animating Little Nemo and Neverland, and it just goes on from there. It really illustrates what animation was like before Disney got a hold of it, but it does take the period goes up through Fantasia being released and sort of both high art and low art of animation. But what's especially interesting are those early years where like Popeye's spinach was a stand-in for marijuana, where Betty Boop appeared topless, Felix the cat committed suicide. It's just loaded with stories like that. Wild Minds is just terrific. And then lastly is Beneficence, which is another beautiful, quiet novel from David Godine. Meredith Hall's, this is her first novel. She has written an award-winning memoir about a decade ago. So she's been at work at this for a while. This is set in rural Maine during the Depression on a farm, an isolated farm, and you have the building of the beautiful Center family, the couple getting together, their 3 children being born and raised, how they never missed a meal despite being in tough times, and then tragedy strikes and one of them is gone suddenly. And it's how the telling is in how the family recovers themselves. It is a beautiful family saga with some really profound reflections on grief and guilt that really shouldn't be missed. Again, it's a small title from David Godine, but Beneficence is just a beautiful read. And that's it from IPS. Please be sure to use, whenever you're ordering from IPS, the promo code TY20 for thank you 20. That will get you an extra 3% on any backlist or any front list actually releasing between now and December 12th. That's good for multiple uses. Thank you, everybody.